Yep, Andrew, we're ready to go live in about 10 seconds.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the September 15th, 2020 GRCC meeting. We have a lot to discuss tonight. Lots to discuss regarding legislative updates, regarding public communication, and there's also a resolution that we'll be discussing as well. First, why don't we start with administrative remarks?
No MM remarks tonight, Mr. Babson, Dr. Babson.
All right, great. So we'll entertain any public comment.
No public comment.
Okay, so assuming that you guys have had a chance to look at the minutes from our last meeting, which has been quite a while ago, any discussion on that? Any discussion on our May 12th minutes? Okay. All right, so let's move forward with our agenda items. So let's start with agenda item 4.1, and we'll hand it over to Mr. Petiti.
Thank you. Yes. Before I get to that, I just want to publicly welcome, and I know I'm sure you meant to do this, Dr. Babson, but I wanted to just publicly welcome our student representative,
Thank you,
Miss Ellie Davis from Radnor High School, to join the committee this year. So, welcome.
Yes, Ellie, welcome. Thank you, Michael.
No problem. So, having that formality out of the way, we can move to the presentation, which includes our first agenda item, a discussion around, looks like the host has disabled screen sharing for now. So, Chris, if you don't mind.
Yep, you're good now.
Thank you. So we'll talk about the first item, which is a discussion around a resolution supporting a resolution from Radnor Township, strongly encouraging citizens to wear face masks to help mitigate the spread of COVID-19. And just quick background, on your right-hand side, I believe on your screen, you'll see the resolution from Radnor Township that was passed, I believe, in the end of August. And this would be the resolution that our resolution would support. So with that being said, and on the screen, I guess I invite Dr. Babson to maybe speak more about the impetus for this proposition.
Sure. So the impetus for this resolution was that I think that right now we're in a really uncertain time regarding our school reopening plans. And I think that as a matter of public consensus, I think we can all agree that we would love to have as low community spread of SARS-CoV-2 as possible, and that we would like to encourage and support any kind of community action that would further that end. And so just on a side note, I personally have been contacting members of the Board of Commissioners for several months, including the president and the vice president of the Board of Commissioners, and my local Ward 7 Commissioner, Sean Farey, to pass some kind of resolution in order to encourage people to wear masks in our community. And the point of that drive on my own part was that I thought that it was very important for the community to rally around whatever they could do to lower the spread of this virus. And mask wearing has been shown overwhelmingly by research to do just that. And it's a really effective, what's called non-medical intervention, or NMI. So with all that being said, there was a resolution passed in August by the Board of Commissioners. And it basically just encouraged mask wearing. And on the heels of that, there is a new campaign on the part of the township called Mask Up Radnor. And I think it's a very positive campaign. It's meant to just simply remind people that masking is a very important public health act, and it's a community act. And I think it's very relevant for us for us as district leaders to support that, to support whatever kind of action we can do on the part of the community to help us stay open, assuming that we'll be able to open partially, hopefully sometime in the near future. So that, I hope that gives you guys a sense of the impetus for putting this out there. Of course, it's a good time to talk about this and to mull it over and to discuss it. So how about we hand it over for some discussion? And would anyone like to jump in and comment? Brad?
I support this resolution. Generally speaking, I have concerns about precatory resolutions that, comment on areas that are beyond our domain in the schools. I've been a strong supporter of motions that advocate for positions before the state legislature about pending legislation that might involve our schools. This potentially is analogous to that in that we're commenting on something that the township has done that will support our ability to return to in-person school. Even stronger might have been something that encouraged the township to take action it has not yet taken action to do, such as enforcement, or if not enforcement, if that's beyond the scope of what the township can do, some kind of further outreach beyond the Mask Up campaign. So I'll be interested to see what the Mask Up campaign does. But if there are police officers in parks with bags of masks and things like that, that can all get us moving in the right direction. So I'll support this because I think it's so important, in any step that we can take to encourage our community to do what we need to do to help our students return in person, for those families that are looking for that, is something that could be helpful. But it should be clear, and I do have at least reservations about, how much are we setting forth resolutions that, comment on things that are beyond the scope of what schools do. So this arguably falls within that, but under the special circumstances of this pandemic, I think it's worth voting for.
Thank you for those comments. Great. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm not in support of this motion, not because I don't believe in the heart of its message. I do. I believe that we as a board have spoken loud and clear. We've spoken loud and clear in our requirement with that when our students and staff and others return to class, that they will be socially distanced and required to wear masks at all times. I believe that our health and safety plan also, as elucidated in this resolution, outlines that. I think the school board has spoken loud and clear. I think this is beyond, and Mr. Moore referred to this, is a little overkill. I think all of us have been on the record, public record, time and time again. I just think this is probably just an area in which I'm personally not comfortable just weighing in to something that is not what I consider to be in the school district's domain, but that in no way intimates that we don't support masking, of course, and its proper usage. So I will be voting in opposition to supporting this resolution.
Amy?
I agree with what Jeff just said. I don't know what else I have to add. I think that, like Jeff said, I think our school board has made it abundantly clear that through action items, provisions we've added into our health and safety plans, that over which we have dominion, that we believe strongly that masking up is essential to mitigating the spread. And while I appreciate what the township does, and I think it's important, and I certainly plan to adhere to it and urge all others to adhere to it too, I do think that this resolution is a bit just a step beyond what we typically resolve to do as a board. It goes just a bit beyond that, and I'm concerned about I'm just concerned right now with putting out a statement like this at this particular time.
Okay. Uh, Before we proceed, I mean, I would like to, just engage in a little bit of discussion. Um, I think that one thing I'd just like to really emphasize is that, the township already made a resolution, so we don't have to do that. We don't have to do the resolution that they did, but this is just a public support of that. And by extension, specifically the Mask Up campaign. So in other words, it's a step toward making it a little bit more official that we are partners with the township, that we want to work together for this in this really extraordinary time. I think that Mr. Moore put it really well that in normal times, I don't even think this would have crossed my mind to put this on the agenda. Um, but I think that these times are totally extraordinary for us anyway in our own individual lives. And so, my inclination is to just step up as a district and really underline and highlight our position on these matters above and beyond what we've done. So yes, we've passed motions to the effect that you've talked about, Jeff and Amy, but we haven't talked about supporting what the township does in order for us to sort of work together to further each other's aims, right? Because the brute fact of it is that if the transmission rate in our community is not low enough, we will not be able to sustain any kind of school opening, whether that be partial or full. So I just want to highlight that, yes, it is unusual. It might seem like overstepping, but I think in this very, very unusual circumstance, definitely unique in our own lives, I just wanted to kind of put a finer point on that, and also that we're supporting this initiative that the township has engaged in.
Andrew or whomever, could you
Yeah.
share this, whomever share the screen again? Because I feel like I want to make sure that what I'm looking at, thank you. Because in the agenda, it did not include the township's resolution. At least I didn't see it. So I just wanted to, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so the original draft had some extra language in it that we actually pared down, in conversation with Ken and Michael. Michael and I worked together to kind of pare it down to the facts. The fact that we have done these things, recognizing those acts, and then kind of leading to this idea that we support what the township is doing right now. With this campaign, I've seen the signs in the parks; they look great. Molly did a really excellent job at the township of doing that work. So, it's just a way for the township and the district to kind of come together on what I kind of think is low hanging fruit. I mean, who doesn't want schools to reopen, at least partially? And mask wearing would certainly further that end. So. Yeah, I mean, I thought this would be kind of a low-hanging fruit way to, try to work more closely together with the township, which I know has been a goal of our board now and our district for a while. So I think that's about all I have to personally say about it. But if there's other things that we can talk about, I'd be happy to entertain more conversation.
So, Dr. Babson, procedurally, where we go from there, we've got your strong endorsement, my somewhat equivocal endorsement, two who are on the other side of the fence. This sounds like it wouldn't be something ripe for a consent agenda on September 29th. Would it be your position, Dr. Babson, that this is something we would, bring to the whole board to debate on the 29th?
I think that it would be worth doing that. I think that that there are other members on the board that might think differently about this, or might even feel strongly about it one way or the other. And I do think that the public might benefit from a whole board discussion of this particular issue. I think it's very important that we do whatever we can together with the township to make our reopening partial or whole, as sustainable as possible. And masking is a huge part of that. There are many other things that we can do, obviously, but encouraging mask wearing in public is a big one.
Dr. Babson, you're
Yeah.
going to need to have actually 3 votes on the committee to move this forward, to
Yeah.
have a majority.
Mhm.
And so at this point, it looks to me, if I'm reading it right, it's 2-2, which does not
Sure.
advance it. And I know how important this issue has been to you, and all of us, I think, have made it clear that our objection to this is not about the value of wearing masks. I mean, I think our objection is more of a procedural thing in that these are really, we've got a lot on our plates. They're really challenging times emotionally, procedurally, strategically, governmentally, and otherwise. And I think it's just a matter, sometimes, it's just sort of a call that maybe we have done so much to convey our commitment and the sense of bring a sense of urgency to mask wearing, to mitigate the spread in areas over which we have dominion. And maybe in a different time, it would be, where we're sort of on the potential boundary here of a little bit outside of our lane, perhaps we could take that chance. I'm just not sure that at the moment we are. But regardless, I appreciate the fact that the discussion that's taken place tonight, but procedurally, without 3 people on the committee, 3 board members on this committee being willing to advance it to the full board, it really needs to come back for some additional discussion, or it just can't move forward.
Right. Okay. So what would that additional, we'd have to circle back to see if it would warrant some additional discussion at another time. But, let me just be very clear here that, I mean, you seem to really lay out a very good case to actually support this resolution in the sense that we are at a very important time right now, where are going to be making a vote next week on the 22nd about whether or not to go hybrid. And I think that this is a really good time to really underline for the district, for the township, that we are working together. There's been a lot of talk about working together on this. And this, to me, this kind of diffidence is not what we need right now. We need confidence. We need to be moving forward in a confident way and in a strong way to say strongly that we want to work with the township to keep our schools open, or to at least get them back open up again. I would think that that certain community groups would really support this, especially community groups that would love to reopen the schools.
Yeah, I think the community has spoken loud and clear that they are in support of the same mission. Seeing it widely across social media amongst groups of parents who frankly are not happy with some of the decisions we've made, who have started campaigns or supported campaigns to mask up, especially over Labor Day weekend.
Yeah,
I think we're on the same page. It's more what, and I agree with Amy said, is process. So and Andrew, I want to also point out how much you've been on a mission, as all of us, but in particular, thank you, because I know what you've done individually with the township and some of the areas in which you have reached out on your own volition when you had some concerns about what the township had been doing previously. So I want to share that. But I think like we're kind of in a circle, because I feel like while we all agree on the heart of the message, it's sort of, I feel very confident that we have sent that message through our actions, through our health and safety plan, through our athletics, well, that is the plan, through our reopening plan, through our requirement that all masks all day, no excuses. Well, I shouldn't say no excuses. I should say, we had changed that because of concerns in the community and amongst our board as it relates to even the type of mask that we would require, which went beyond at that time what the state and federal and the county sort of had agreed upon, at least in unity, collectively. So that's where I think my concern lies.
And
Okay.
Jeff, to your
Yeah.
point, in response, actually, we received a ton of input from our community begging us to, go even further with our masking in our health and safety plan. And we responded resoundingly as a board. So I think, our community, I think for the most part is really on board with this already. And I think they're on board with it. I prefer to put our requests behind and our resolve behind things maybe where our position isn't as well known, or for issues that maybe haven't gotten the attention that the face masks have. So
Well,
that's
why in either? This is not an either or situation. You can bring attention to any other number of matters. I mean, honestly, Jeff and Amy, you've laid out a really good rationale for supporting this. So I don't know what procedural nub or procedural sticking point.
I find it a little.
I don't really understand it.
I
What
find
is the procedural sticking point?
No, I find it a little patronizing, to be honest with you.
Do you?
I
Okay.
do. I'm just by how I feel.
Okay.
It's like we put it in the rules, we put it in the policies, we've said it, we've publicized it, and now we're going to say, it's
We
like,
support
again,
the
think it sends
township's
the right
new
message.
campaign to mask up.
We do. We don't need a resolution to prove that. That's what I feel.
Well, but a resolution doesn't prove anything. It just makes an official statement on the part of the board that we support it. I mean,
I respect that. I just
I
disagree
do.
with the
I guess
process.
I'm surprised because I just didn't see any controversy here. Frankly, it's interesting.
And if I may, Dr. Babson, I
Sure.
mean, I do understand the procedural objection. It's not beyond the scope of our authority to pass this resolution, but it does comment on another governing body's domain. So as I think Mr. Jubilier put it, this happened before I was on the board, but I remember there was a substantial debate about a resolution related to whether the state legislature would allow school districts to authorize guns in schools, to allow school districts to arm the faculty. And there was a substantial debate on the board at that time before I joined the board about, whether commenting on that kind of issue was, beyond the scope of what the school board should be doing. But that was an issue that, directly affected what was happening in schools. And I made a public comment at that meeting, and while I supported that resolution, just as a member of the public at that time, I mentioned another resolution that the school board had put forward, saying that they, that were at least considered about whether Betsy DeVos should be the Secretary of Education or was qualified to be Secretary of Education. And and I saw a contrast between those two. Commenting on an issue that has a direct effect on schools rather than making a public statement on something that has happened in another governing body. So I can see the difference there, and I think there's a debate about which side of the line this resolution falls on. But I do understand the objection to something like this, that does not authorize any action, or even in this case advocate for any action. It's praising another government body's action that they've already taken.
Right. And and I think that logically speaking, I see your point. And that goes, for your point as well, Amy, and your point too, Jeff, that, who are we to be commenting on the actions of a township, another governing body. I think what nullifies that in this case is the fact that we have a pandemic and that we have a very clear set of NMIs that are very effective. And if we see the township doing something that is not only praiseworthy in its own right, I think that's a matter of opinion, but actually in a practical sense, it could make a practical difference for what we do as a district. And also it does dovetail with, again, our, a drive in recent memory for us to work more closely together with the township. And this is exactly the kind of matter that presents that opportunity for us, in my opinion. I would think that masking would be kind of a bipartisan thing at this point, that it would really help. It would really help us, give us options for school reopening. So, it is that this is where it's gone now, 2-2, and we move forward. But I think that it is worth us to really consider what kind of public statements we make as a board, and what kind of relationship that we have with the township, and little things that we can do to really increase that rapprochement with the township. I thought this is low hanging fruit, honestly. So I'm actually very surprised, but that's fine. It's the way government works. You have a debate and you take a poll, you take a vote. So.
And Andrew, I think the efforts to connect us, with the commissioners and our township, this won't, by not doing this, won't hurt that. And I think we've actually developed and had very good relationships, and we'll continue to do that. So I'm not worried that this will be taken that way. And the only thing that I would just, as we circle back and as a board, the challenge we have so much is what things are in our purview and what aren't. And there's a lot of things that are within our purview that we do get very involved in as with our communities. Whether it is sometimes it is sounding an alarm over what's going on in social media, whether it's concerns over things that we just want our parents to know about. And I try to really balance, and it's really hard. I want to be very careful how we as a school district use those opportunities to kind of reach into, what's going on within the community, what's going on outside of the, I'll say, and they're now virtual walls, but the walls of our school and what is going on. So I think that's what's also at part of this is this discussion of, those lines. So I don't think it's as much about, support or not support of the commissioners. I think we have a lot of support for our commissioners, a lot of support for what they've done. I think a lot of support for masking. We as a district have gone to great lengths for that. And I think as Jeff said, your efforts in this area, are truly appreciated. But I think it's also, for me, I always stop and try to look at, okay, how are we now, as a school, what are those things that we have within our purview or within where we should be sharing with our community, and what things are maybe the commissioners, what things are in the purview of other areas. And I think that's part of this discussion as well. I think, Bradley, your point of, past topics, it's really difficult. It's really difficult for us with a GRCC to know what are those things that are really pertinent to us and our mission as a school, and where are those things that go beyond, but we may want to get involved and may not. And that's where this conversation, centered tonight. And I think it's, a conversation, as this particular doesn't move forward, but it's certainly a conversation we're going to continue to have as a board to how do we draw those lines on each topic. And it's something I always try to be cautious of and aware of as we move forward.
Yeah, no, thank you for those comments, Ken. Your points are very well taken. And, another thing that we could say from what you just said is that there are no objective standards for any of this. I was kind of searching there for a rock solid rationale behind, any kind of dividing line between what would be within our purview and what would be without it. And the discussion really clarified that there is no bright line. There is no solid line here about what is and what isn't our purview. This is simply a matter of the opinions of 4 people. about an issue that has, I think, a lot of importance right now. So look, we'll wrap up our discussion of this. Thank you for your time and your discussion on this. I hope that we continue as a board and as a district to do whatever we can within our purview to further our adherence to guidelines, to further our commitment to NMIs, to reduce the spread of the disease through our own actions and our own activities. So with that in mind, Michael, I'm going to hand it back over to you, and we'll proceed with agenda item 4.2.
Before it goes back to Mr. Bettini, Ms. Davis, you've seen the GRCC in action, and any comment? How are we doing?
Well, the only thing I'd like to say, in an effort to try and avoid being too repetitive, is that I think you all know this, that after the first week and a half of school, the students want to be back. So, and I think you all already know that, but just emphasizing the resounding want to be back in school and being able to see each other and interact with our teachers. Starting school and going online, though, we all really appreciate the online program. That want has really, we've seen everybody wants to go back to school. So any efforts that can support that, I feel confident in saying that the student body would support any efforts that might better our ability to return in a few weeks. So thank you.
Thank you, Ellie, for those comments. Okay, Mike, over to you.
So I had a couple of videos that I was going to show. I'll share the screen again. However, I wonder if in the interest of time with the other subjects we have, that those videos, are just that, and they would be available on our YouTube channel at some point in the near future. And they were going to concern an explainer on our websites that are catered for the information concerning 2020, 2021. There was a short video on our Radnor Reader, which is our district's e-newsletter, and how you can subscribe to this newsletter, which we invite all staff, parents, and community members to do. You don't have to necessarily have a student in the school. And then another video on our social media presence, which involves an Instagram and Twitter account officially, and just how you go about following us on those accounts and the information that you can expect to see on them. So I think that, it's a good thing is we have a couple videos that we can put on our YouTube channel, about 10 minutes worth of time people could spend checking in on how to stay in communication with us and vice versa. And then we can move on to the other agenda items if everyone kind of agrees that's a good approach.
Sounds good to me.
That work? Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Sure. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, if I can get there. We wanted to talk a little bit about some, I guess, hot button topics and questions that have arisen since, over the past couple of weeks, particularly in light of this unique school year. And one of those was where to go for info to specific questions or concerns that a parent may have regarding their student's educational experience. So we wanted to clarify kind of the steps that a parent would take. And we tried to do that in this slide in a concise way by starting off with the teacher you can read, for yourself in the kind of maroon box there. And then the steps that would go from there, depending upon the nature of the response and your remaining potential concerns. So then we also, having that in mind, we wanted to let people know where they can go to get additional contact information beyond the teacher and the principal and the directors of elementary and secondary. And so on our website, underneath popular links on the homepage, you'll see here on the right-hand side, there's a directory link that takes you to a directory where you can search last names to get specific information on a teacher's or staff member's extension or email. And then over here on the bottom left, underneath our district and administration, there is a contact list of all administrators at the central office, high school, middle school, and elementary schools. So just wanted to take a moment to quickly go over this kind of availability of this information and how it works at the start of the school year. Any questions particularly about this slide?
No questions, but just thank you. I know that sometimes when you first come to a school, you enroll your first child. It's hard to imagine that there's anybody else in the school system besides your child's wonderful teacher. Then you realize there's a principal, and oh, by the way, there are all these other people. So this is just a tool, I think, to help people understand who it is that's on staff beyond just your immediate building, in case at some point you need somebody and a navigational chart to help you get there in case it's something that can't be satisfied at the building level.
Yep, thank you. Moving to another kind of what we're calling helping clarify kind of topic, and that's the timing for possible in-person schooling. So what we're trying to accomplish with the next couple slides is identifying certain topics that have come up that we've heard potentially in the media, or just frequently asked questions that have come through our Radnor email address or our board questions address, asking about maybe there's some clarifications needed about certain subjects. So we've pinpointed 3, and we're going to start with this in-person schooling. And so really what we did here was just take the history of our decision-making around return to school in person and just put it on one slide in a kind of succinct way to explain how we got to where we're going to be next Tuesday. So at the risk of reading a slide, you can go through each bullet point on your own, but the crux of the matter really lies with the 3 options that were kind of provided at that August 18th meeting.
And Michael, I'll jump in on this one
sure.
too, just because, and part of the goal tonight, and thank you, Michael, for what you've put together, is just to share. I mean, there's been so much communication, and we're all overwhelmed. And when I say all, I mean parents, kids, teachers, administrators, everybody's getting so much emails. When we go to a virtual world, with our teaching program, it's just emails. We're all inundated right now. We're also inundated because frankly, the passions are high about a lot of topics, and there's a lot of concern. And as Ellie shared with us, our kids want to be back in. Our school board wants our kids back in. Our administration wants our kids back in. Our teachers want to see our kids back in. I mean, no one doesn't want to see our kids back in. The challenge is how to do it. And we on August 18th shared potential options. And it's actually fascinating to me, and as we shared these potential options, we right away said that 2A was not something that the administration and board were very interested in. We were not interested in 2A, but we shared that option because 2A does take into account some of the staggering that the health department, has recommended for us to consider. Time, we said, would tell, and time is telling us now each week as we look at the metrics that our county is being pretty consistent with our positivity. Yes, it's gone up a little bit the last 2 weeks, but our positivity has held pretty consistent in Delaware County. Same with our incidents as well. And with the last couple of weeks, even though we saw a little bit of an increase, it has still put us in what we are calling the guardrails, which is a separate charts, but the guardrails for when we can bring students back. And what we're going to be talking about and what we put on the table when you look at 2B and 2C were options for bringing kids in before we had the metrics. Now, knowing the metrics that we have, we're going to be able to have a discussion next week on Tuesday, and especially looking at that 2C that we put out there, the idea of trying to bring K2 in as early as September 28th is a possibility, is a very serious possibility based on the metrics. And I think the school board's vote, I think that's the other piece that needs to be clear, was the vote was to allow the potential for 2C to happen. Was a vote that this is an option that is still on the table for us, as well as other options that could have been developed because we had no idea where the metrics would be. And as I said, the metrics are looking good for us to be moving forward to be moving forward with something similar. And that's what I shared in my most recent message before school started. That idea of a 2C where we could start K2 in and then start phasing other grade levels as well, and then working towards getting all of our students back. Again, the weekly monitoring of the metrics is going to be critical. That weekly monitoring is going to dictate when we have to either begin the virtual or we can't move to the virtual, depending on that weekly monitoring of our metrics as we move forward, and also our experiences as we bring in students K2, as we bring in students 3 to 5, as we bring in students. And the piece I shared with the community recently too is that, under consideration, and board members have been asking for this, and board members have been pushing that if we start K2, could we also look at the transition years? Could we look at a 6th grade and 9th grade as well? And that's something that we're looking at as well. We shared in our recent message that as we look to phase in and bring kids back using the guardrails, should we not just be looking at K2? Should we be looking at 6th grade and 9th grade, as an earlier start, and then phasing in other grade levels as we move forward? So I hope I helped explain some of these. So any questions from board members on this? But there's a lot of information that's been thrown at people over the last few weeks and months. So thank you, Michael, for putting this slide together.
And
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Batchelor, sorry. Yeah, Mr. Batchelor, just to maybe add to something on this slide, because it's something I've gotten a lot of questions about over emails. We had our July 28th vote to start the year in hybrid on September 8th. And there's been a lot of emails we've gotten, why would the board reverse that decision? But this is something that happened in collaboration with the administration coming to us and saying, we're getting new information, we're getting new guidance, we're getting new data. We should schedule a meeting October. I made the same mistake you did, Mr. Batchelor. Schedule a meeting August 11th, and then potentially make a decision to stay the course or do something new August 18th. So these were meetings that were not emergency meetings that were scheduled. These were meetings that were in response to new circumstances and new information, and we had serious deliberation on both the 11th and the 18th about these options. Is that a fair characterization?
Not only a fair characterization, I think the one question I've tried to talk to a lot of families and parents and I've got a lot of emails, and I know I'm trying to respond to as many and talk to people when I can. And the one question I do repeatedly hear is, what changed? In September 28th, you were hybrid and you had such a good plan. The school district had a plan. And then on August 18th, we changed. What changed? Well, a great deal changed. The health department that governs our area recommended that all private and parochial schools in Delaware and Chester County should start the year virtually until through October 9th. So that was a big deal. So that we made a vote on September 28th. We made a decision.
July, Ken.
Sorry, July.
It's all right.
I know, it's already a long night. Thank you.
You're consistent September, though.
Thank you. It's good. Maybe it's the song, See You in September. I'm all stuck. But all right, so on July 28th, we made a decision to open up hybrid. And in that decision, we said, we're lacking guardrails. We knew that. We talked about that as a board, and the board has been very thoughtful about, what's going to govern us that if we should have to close. How would we know? What is community spread? What is that metric? And the health department kept sharing with us they were going to give us that metric. The state even said they were going to get us that metric. And then from our vote July 28th, then our vote on August 18th, what changed was that first off, we received a metric, and that metric that we received, or that those guardrails, I should say, that we could apply the metrics to, those guardrails that we received would give us now the guide for how we should move between phase 3 or phase 2. But the other piece that the health department did was they recommended we begin virtually, and they gave 3 factors for that recommendation. And we were watching positivity at the end of July climb, and everyone thought it was going to continue to climb. Thankfully, that 6.5 high positivity at the end of July has continued to go down, except for the last 2 weeks, went down though from the end of July until the last 2 weeks is when it just climbed up again a little bit. But now we have that opportunity to apply that to the guardrails. The other factor they were concerned about with that October 9th recommendation was Labor Day. So Labor Day was a real concern and end of summer travel and how that might increase positivity. And that the health department wanted our numbers in the county as low as possible because they know once we bring students in, we are going to have spread. Okay, we're having spread. We've been having spread, in Radnor, since March, and we've continued to have that happen. And we will continue to spread, and we've discussed that, but they wanted the numbers as low as possible for when we bring kids in. The reason we put a K2 in there back on August 18th, and even now still think that K2 is going to be possible and a staggered for the other grade levels, is because right now, in my opinion, and many board members' opinion right now, we're seeing good results from the metrics. We're seeing good results that the positivity that was at high of 6.5 has come down, and it's falling within those guidelines for us to open. So when people ask what changed between July and August, the health department gave a recommendation, and the state has been very clear that school districts need to be working with their local health departments on making decisions on how we move forward.
Ken, thank you very much for that. May I jump in for a couple other quick things? Is that, thank you. That explanation is, I hope a lot of people are watching and have heard what you just said, because I think you did answer a number of questions that are floating around out there. So to counter the point that the school board, did away with a hybrid model, sort of, it seems, whimsically or arbitrarily, I think you've answered the question. No, we did not. We followed the guidance and the recommendation of the administration that was getting guidance from the health department. And, we're not public health experts, and we have the greatest superintendent in the region. So, when we ask you for your recommendation, that means a lot to us. And as the slide illustrates, you gave us your recommendation, and for all intents and purposes, that is in fact what we are following to the T. I also want to just point out that Radnor, some of the other school districts around have announced what plans they're going to use when they resume hybrid at some point, all of which were designed by you and your administration long before these other school districts. So hats off to you for having the forethought to recognize that there could be a way to phase in our students long before, potentially, if things worked out right, October 9th. I'm looking down, by the way. I'm sorry. I'm going to move you all up here on my screen. I feel like I'm looking in my lap. But I just, for people out there who are noticing other districts announcing their plans, I humbly submit that Radnor's administration was ahead of things in designing this kind of plan. And in fact, if all things continue to go well, and it's your comfort that we could get back in soon, we might be doing, our students might be in school sooner than some of our neighbors' kids will be in school. So I just wanted to point those things out in the spirit of addressing some of the questions or concerns or confusion even that might be out there in the community.
I also just want to echo the importance of this slide. Thank you, Michael. Over communication never has to be apologized for.
Yep.
Under communication does. Radnor, in my biased opinion, has done an excellent job. And the importance of it. We as a committee, we as a board, and you as an administration, and I know you'll continue, and I can't say enough. Communicate. Doesn't always work, but at least we have these charts, we have records, we have timelines, and I know you'll continue to do that, and thank you.
I think these are great thoughts. Thank you. And, if I could just echo, in terms of communication, public communication, we've said from the get-go that we are going to be shifting, according to the situation. I've personally have had a very strong commitment to following the science and following the numbers, and that will guide us in the right direction. And as Ken said, we had more direct involvement from our county health department. to provide more specific guidance. And so I think that it's really as simple as that. And I think it's very productive and helpful to have good, clear communication about these things, and to open things up for questions and answers if it isn't clear. I think that's equally important. Brad, did you want to chime in? Or?
Yeah, just one other point to potentially add to what we're talking about on the slide. And again, I agree with the statements about how helpful this is. You know, Mr. Batchelor, another question I've been getting, I think some people saw that GRCC's meeting tonight. I got an email at 5 p.m. that said, you know, why is there a GRCC meeting? You know, why isn't this a school board meeting to talk about reopening? You know, so, you know, you're putting aside, you know, procedurally what's necessary to call a special board meeting. I know the board member who made the motion that passed on August 18th isn't here, but, you know, is it fair to say, Mr. Batchelor, you know, that part of the reason we're looking at this on September 22nd and not tonight or some other day is, you know, we wanted enough time to pass between the Labor Day holiday and when we came together again to make a potentially new decision or an adjustment, you know, especially since that was one of the three prongs of the guidance about encouraging us to open remotely.
Yeah, we were encouraged to actually have this conversation later by some people. So the 22nd was actually a compromise in that regard.
Yes, and the 2 dates, even though the health department recommended October 9th, the 2 weeks after Labor Day, and we get that data every Friday, and it's not posted until after 5, often on a Friday. And so we want to see that 2 weeks worth of data. That being said, because we've seen pretty good metrics within the last couple of weeks, or I should say some consistency within Delaware County is really what I'd like to say. We've seen some consistency. We are feeling more comfortable this week in what we could be discussing on Tuesday. Now, those metrics had been very different the last few weeks. I think we'd be having a very different conversation right now, but because we've seen metrics that have been fairly consistent within the guardrails, we're feeling comfortable administratively, I will speak, with, you know, looking at what we did, you know, discussed about, you know, bringing K2 in. And the challenge with all this is we got to prepare people. You know, we've got to allow people to prepare, both our teachers and our parents, for when we make a change. When is the change going to happen? How much lead time and all of those things. So those are all pieces that we will discuss a little bit more in length, you know, on Tuesday. But yes, that meeting was as early as we felt and honoring the passage of time of Labor Day.
And you raise a really good point. I remember on August 11th, both Dr. Brennan and Dr. Rubin emphasized, you know, it's not just about a particular number or a particular data point on a particular day. It's really the overall trend that is important for making decisions about whether your reopening can be sustainable or not.
And I hope that this underlines for whoever's listening the really touch and go nature of this. This is a moving target. You know, some scientists believe that we won't really see any kind of Labor Day effect or not until the last week of September or the first week of October. So, you know, we're making the best decisions as a board, and the administration is making their best decisions with the information that is available, which, you know, goes back to your crucial role, Michael. Ellie, would you like to chime in?
Oh, and just before you jump to,
Yeah.
sorry, Ellie, just very quickly too,
Sure.
and just so, you know, there's no winning in this discussion, and it's not about winning and losing. It's really not. But I say that just from a standpoint that this whole discussion, you know, there's a lot of people who feel very passionate on all different sides of this issue. Our community feels very passionate on all different sides. As I've always talked about, you know, board members are 9 individuals. Those 9 individuals, you know, are, you know, act as individuals. I've seen it in every district I've worked in. And as individuals, we often represent also what's going on in our community, and that diversity of opinion that is in our community as well. So there are certainly some people hearing this saying, well, why would we even try potentially? Why would we even be so cavalier to talk on August 18th about K2 coming in, and even still consider that now prior to the health department? And that's because we've had serious discussions with the health department about younger students, and that the importance of staggering to make sure our protocols are all in place, that the 10 and under kids, what we know, and it could all change, but the science about their ability to shed the virus, what some of the studies and research have shown. And let's be honest, the challenge of K2 students trying to learn virtually. It's a challenge for all of, some kids I'm sure are doing very well with it and enjoy it, but there's a challenge for all of our kids to be online, and especially our youngest learners. So we feel very comfortable with looking at K2 ahead of the health department, because we've been in communication with them on why this would be a sound thinking. And so that it's not us just looking at it and going against it, it's us looking at the consistency of the metrics and now getting to a point with the consistency that where does it make sense based on what we know with the science, and based frankly on the needs of the kids too, what's going on in our communities. And if we're going to start to bring kids in, how do we do it so that we can, as a board member said, and I think it was really insightful that the board, this board said, we should walk before we run. And how do we continue to walk before we run as we look to bring our kids back? And it's something that everybody, on this board has been committed to trying to do.
Indeed, safety first. Ellie, let's hand it over to you. I feel like I overlooked you last time, so I'd love to have your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that in the past few months, there's been a lot more student participation in public comment, in emails, even in petitions than there's ever been before. And I think that's a reflection of good communication from the school board and from the administration. So I think that's been a really positive thing to see that the students feel empowered and comfortable to make public comments and to contact the school board with an issue that impacts them, their lives more directly and obviously than a lot of the other issues that the school board typically deals with. So I think that reflects the positive communication.
Great. Thanks for those comments. All right, Mike, back over to you.
Okay, so we have two more subjects here, and I know it's already an hour, so we'll try to just kind of go through the bullet points and hopefully clarify things regarding right at school. So a little bit of background here. There had been a recent article in the Philadelphia Inquirer that touched on the childcare, like the concept of childcare happening within schools that are closed, or that are, I should say, teaching fully virtually, and the apparent contradiction perhaps behind bringing students, quote, into a school to be cared for by a third-party provider, such as a right at school childcare, when the school physically is not in session with bringing kids in. So to address that topic and to give some accuracy around the subject, wanted to present this slide and just let folks read over the logistics here behind right at school coming into our Ethan Lodge. As you'll see, right at school is a child care provider, and under Pennsylvania's green phase of reopening, which we're currently in, child care may open in compliance with guidance. As we mentioned in our conversation just a moment ago, Chester County Health Department did recommend our public, private, and parochial schools to begin the school year completely virtual, and that recommendation did not exist to child care providers. We are ensuring that right at school is abiding by all of the safety and health protocols and guidelines in place, both in our health and safety plan and following the guidelines that they have outlined upon our demand. We're not charging right at school to operate on district property and receiving no financial benefits from right at school. And we requested to pass this savings on to the parents to achieve the lowest rate possible. No instruction is being provided by right at school to students. So there is a misconception in some regards that there could be right at school acting as a sort of facilitator of instruction for students on their iPads or on their devices. This is not the case. Students are engaging independently on their instructional program. Arlington Lodge has not housed students for 5+ years in terms of an RTSD classroom, and that's where we're having the program. And again, the program was in response in many ways to kind of requests from families and even staff to provide childcare. So I hope that this slide in a way helps to clarify the information around right at school. Any quick questions or comments regarding this subject? Okay. Lastly, we wanted to just discuss the Raiders name and imagery and provide a quick recap on kind of the chronological order around the decision on the second to retire the Raiders name and related imagery. And we thought it'd be helpful with the conversation that's occurring through social media and elsewhere and in local papers to put forth the chronological order of when we began discussing the aspects of discussing this subject, and really kind of an official letter, you could say, you could pinpoint onto July 9th, which is when we, the Superintendent Batchelor and our school board president, issued a message through email to our community, letting them know that we wanted to take up this discussion, and also providing some information regarding the background of Raiders, or Red Raiders, as it was known colloquially. At that time, we mentioned that an August 4th meeting was going to take place, that the school board would convene a special meeting to receive public comment and discuss the next steps around how they would approach this issue. And at that meeting on August 4th, more than 140 comments were received from community members and heard by the board. We wanted to make sure that people knew that they could submit comments and be a part of this process. So as you could see, we advertised in our newsletter, we advertised in our website, we posted information on our social media accounts. We wanted to be as transparent as possible that this conversation was taking place and what it meant to the community and what it meant to our alumni. So on 4 separate editions of the Radnor Reader, we made sure to highlight that this was happening. I have the July 19th edition pulled out as an example. And wanted to make sure, again, people knew where to watch it. So we made sure that the YouTube channel was linked in the listing so they could go click right to the channel and watch it easily. On the 4th, you may remember we had about 4 hours or so of public comment, and we heard the feedback. We heard from students, and the board decided to reflect on that feedback and then reconvene. And that reconvene meeting was also advertised over 3 different editions, letting people know that there will be next steps being discussed by the board after reflecting on those public comments and other information being received. On the 2nd, that reconvening happened, and the school board, after a thorough discussion as part of its next steps, as outlined earlier at the August 4th meeting, was to vote to retire the Raider by an 8-1 vote, the name, and by a 9-0 vote, the related imagery. Also at that meeting, the board directed administration to plan for a process to retire the name and the imagery, and made a point to request the community inclusive process happen to select a new name and imagery. And then lastly, that announcement, that decision was publicly made available via news release on our website and shared out in an email to staff and families. So again, the point of these last 3 slides was just to get out there in a hopefully concise way, some accurate information around some recent topics of interest in the public. And I hope that we achieved at least that goal slightly. Does anyone have any questions regarding this last slide?
Mr. Petiti, I just want to potentially add one thing as well to the discussion here. I just want to thank you and the technology department and everyone else in the administration for the fact that we also had live comment during that August 4th meeting. I think it was a great innovation. I think it's something we should look into trying at future meetings. Not only, Mr. Petiti, to give you a break from reading public comments aloud yourself, but I think it really helped the engagement and helped the community involvement to give people that opportunity. And I'm grateful that we.
I thought it was a nice touch too, and we'll look into how maybe we can bring something like that back.
I heard a lot of good feedback as well, and that would be great.
Yeah.
One of the benefits, I guess, of being fortunate having to meet this way is there's opportunities for advancement that's coming before we're probably ready for it, but definitely was something I think that was appreciated by those who could participate and those of us who could listen and watch.
All those hours of giving voice to all the community input and comments. You and Allison definitely deserve a tip of the hat. All right. So thank you, Mike. Now we have an item on our agenda about legislative updates. I think because of our time, we're over time now. I would like to open it up to the floor to anyone who'd like to comment about any legislative goings on that are relevant for the district. Amy.
I'd like to just quickly mention that today I was called at the last minute by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association to join a call with the president and the president-elect to talk to Congresswoman Scanlon today about 3 federal advocacy priorities. We spent more time actually talking about a subject that we've been working on for a while, which is fully funding IDEA. And actually we proposed a strategy to her to try to get more of the Pennsylvania delegation on board to try to move that forward, because the federal government, as we've discussed before, has not lived up to its commitment from many years ago. This is from its inception, for decades. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act has not been fully funded to the extent that it was supposed to have been at its conception, and so there is has been movement to try to affect that, so that there is the appropriate funding, which takes a little bit of the pressure off of school districts to fund those very important initiatives for those students who have disabilities. So that's a subject that we're hoping to move forward with, again, with a little bit more robustness. And also there was some conversation about where is that HEROES Act, and I forget what the Senate version of it is. So I just wanted to put that out there because this is a Government Relations Committee meeting that, in fact, we school board members are working really hard on behalf of our constituents, not only in Radnor, but oftentimes we are beholden to state and federal initiatives that have a direct impact on our students. And we're busy working quite often on trying to move those forward to help support all things public education for Radnor students. And something as recently as just a couple hours ago was occurring on that front. So I just wanted to put that forth towards the end of the meeting. And I think that might be the most timely conversation piece about government relations for this meeting.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, that is surely a perennial discussion of perennial topic of federal advocacy interest is fully funding IDEA for sure. Any other comments? I wanted to just mention very quickly that PSBA news that on October 14th and 15th, the School Leadership Conference will be held. Now, usually it's in Hershey. Usually a few of us go to Hershey for this conference, but this year it's going to be virtual. And we do have some people that have signed up for that, correct, Amy?
I'd like to thank you, Dr. Batson, for bringing that up. We do have both Advocacy Day on October 8th. It's virtual, just like we typically have it in the spring, but board members, if you would join us for our formal annual efforts to advocate on behalf of our public education community on October 8th, to please sign up for that through PSBA. And then, yes, the School Board Leadership Conference, which is typically held in Hershey or Harrisburg, is going to be held virtually on October 14th and 15th. And the registration links are open for that as well. So please join us. It's really important that we all lend our voices to bringing what we need forward for. And those are two events coming up right around the corner that would really help to that end.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. All right, let's move to new business. Any new business? Okay. Any public comment? All right. All right. So let's have a motion to adjourn. Okay. Second. All right. All those in favor? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye. Thank you, Ellie. Congratulations on your first meeting with us.
Jeff, happy birthday.
Thank you,
Jeff.
everybody.
Great to celebrate
Great
with
to
you.
be 29. It's great to be 29.